So moving on from the 8-ball, now I want to create a box. And again, I've already gone out and got my reference from online. And, you know, really what I want is the cube shape, the dice shape. So this will work just fine. And we're just using it as reference. We're not going to try to recreate it faithfully in any way, shape, or form. But we do want to create, again, a shape that's a compound path, a single color piece of artwork. There are a lot of different ways to do this. This is probably not the simplest, but it is another good example of how we can use simple primitives to create objects for our illustrations. And this is a very simple one to break down. And then we're going to add a little bit of style to it. We're going to round off some corners and whatnot. Again, very simple steps. So if we take a look at our box, again, we're examining everything before we start, trying to break down what it's composed of. And really what we see are we've got 3 different sides, and each side of the box has 4 sides to its face. So basically I've got 3 squares or polygons. And this is kind of, kind of the way it breaks down. So this is what we're gonna create. So I'm gonna turn off all of my image layers, and we're just gonna start by creating 3 squares. So I'm gonna go over here to my toolbar, again, still working in my Essentials workspace. And I need a new layer first. So let's add a new layer. And this will be my box construction 2. Always name your layers. When you get a lot of layers in a file, they help you identify which layer you need to be working on quicker. So box construction 2, go to our toolbar, grab our rectangle tool, and let's just begin by creating a square. So 2 things I'm going to point out here are, before I get too far into this, are that first of all, if I go to my view menu, I have my smart guides turned on. Command U on the keyboard. Smart guides are what provide, whenever I hover over it, you see the little pink note that the cursor is over top of an anchor, or it's over top of a path. That's what my smart guides do. They also provide some level of snapping, but I've also got, back to my view menu, I also have snap to point turned on, because when I adjust the points on these shapes, I want to snap them to the overlapping ones. So I have smart guides turned on, and I have snap to point turned on. This time I'm going to be using my direct select tool more frequently. So I've drawn that box. I'm going to draw a second box. We'll just make it the same size. And then we'll draw I'm actually just going to, it doesn't really matter. I'll draw a third box. This will be the top. Oops. This will be the top. And we're going to move these points around, so the fact that they're not the same doesn't really matter. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let's zoom in on this a little bit so we can see what's going on. Excuse me. Is that I need to create this shared edge. So I'm going to select this and slide it over until it kind of snaps right to that line. And you see my smart guides are giving me some feedback on this. So now they're precisely overlapped. And then I'm going to turn this one 45 degrees. So select it, hover over the corner. I get that little rotation widget. And if I hold down my shift key, I can constrain that to 45 degrees. So we're going to do that. And now let's start shaping this box. So if we take a look at this, we've got a little bit of perspective going on here. We're going to try to take that into account, as well as some other things. So, our top is wider than our bottom, because we can see that the side tapers inward. And the same thing happens over here. I think I'm going to keep this more orthographic so that this front center point lines up with a point on the back of the box, just because I think that'll create a simpler piece of graphic artwork. But, you know, it depends upon the level of detail you want to put into it. You know, do what you want. I want to keep this simple. So I'm going to go over here and grab my direct select tool, which is the second one down. It's the white arrow. It's also A on my keyboard. And I'm just going to click on this line, and I'm going to drag it over, and I'm going to drag it up a little bit. And I'm going to grab the second line, or the line on this box, click on it, drag it up, and drag it over a little bit. Because we have perspective going on, so, you know, the sides are going to be narrower than the height. So let's do that to sort of start. And we're going to put this on last. So these taper in a hair. So why don't we grab so now if I click on this corner, I can click right on that anchor point. Again, my direct select tool. And I'm just going to drag this in a little bit, taper that a little and taper it up a little bit. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do the same thing. We're just moving points around. Is all that we are doing. So there's a good start. I'm going to keep these parallel for the time being. I might change that later on, but we'll just kind of tweak these up just a little bit. All right. Now, with this shape, I'm just going to pull points until I get everything where I want it. So I'm going to click on this point, drag it down until it snaps to those points and intersects them. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And then this one, I'm just going to drag down. And again, some perspective going on there. So I'm going to drag it just a little bit so that these lines seem to converge. And here's the construction of my very basic box. Not too bad so far. It seems to be working. I think I want to make this side a little wider maybe. So with my direct select tool, if I click and drag over top of all of these points, it'll select them all. And I can just sort of adjust the width of this just a little bit. I think for the, you know, for the size of my box, I think that works a little bit better. But here's the construction of my box. Pretty simple so far. So I like a lot of times, this is my construction. I like a lot of times to work in multiple layers and save various versions. So I'm going to, with this all created, let's just select it all and want to drag it down just a little bit. Don't have to do that part. I'm going to select this box construction layer and I'm going to duplicate it. So if I click on the little hamburger menu for my layers panel, duplicate box construction 2, and then I'm just going to double click on this name and this will be my box artwork. And now I'll just turn off my box construction. I'm going to want to go back to some of these shapes too, as you'll see here in a minute. I'm going to select this all, and I need to start with a silhouette because again, I'm creating a compound path shape. So I'm going to select all of these, and since they're all overlapping, I'm going to go to my Pathfinder panel. And if you're watching these out of order and you don't have this up, Window, Menu, Pathfinder. But I want to join all these together. So I'm going to use the Union or Unite option. Click on that and it creates just a silhouette. And then I don't want this pink line anymore. The pink line isn't really necessary. I just kind of left it the way I had it last time. So I'm going to change this to just a black shape. All right. And now, if we consider, if I go back here and turn on my box construction, let's turn off my layer I'm working on. You see that I've got basically, if I go to my outline mode, Command Y, this is all filled shapes. So I've got sort of an outline on it with light colored inside, and I've got a black panel for the right hand side. So I've got this. Oh, I see what I did. Couldn't figure out what I did wrong here. Turned on the wrong layer. Box artwork is the one I want. All right, so we're going to start by making the outline on this whole thing. So with this object selected, I'm going to use a new command. And while, yes, we could fill this with white and give it a black stroke, that'd be one way to do it. I'm going to do this with the offset path command. So if I go to my object, with this object selected, I go to my object menu, down to path, offset path, I get this dialog. And you see what it did. It duplicated the path at 20 pixels because that was the default or the dimension I had used last time I created something. 20 pixels away from the original. And the important thing to point out is that it's exactly 20 pixels all the way around. If I've got a circle or some other oddball shape, it is still going to be an expansion of 20 pixels. So I don't want it to be 20 pixels. I want it to be a little less than that. But one thing to keep in mind with this offset path panel is that if it's a positive number, it's going to the outside of the original path. If it's a negative number, it'll go to the inside of the original path. So I'm just going to drop this down to about 12. If I click here. So that, that gives me an idea of what my outline is going to be like. Let's go 14. Make it just a little bit more. I think that's good. So we will say, trying to decide if I want to go to the inside of my original path or the outside. We'll go to the outside. See what happens. So we've got that. We're going to say OK. And if I go Command Y on my keyboard, look at preview mode, you can see I've now got the two paths. And I want this to be hollow. So I'm going to select them both, go to my Pathfinder panel, and I'm going to do a minus front. And that gives me my compound path. I like to create compound paths as I go, as opposed to waiting until the end and trying to do them all at once. To start with, you've got to create, when you make compound paths, it can only happen on 2 objects at a time. You can't do it on a whole bunch. So if I just kind of do it as I go, I know that I'm always keeping that compound path in mind. So I've got my compound path there. So now I want the black side now. So I'm going to go back to my original box construction. Let's turn that on. Not my original box construction. This is the one. Turn that off. I have too many layers. I got myself confused. So box construction, I just want to select this. Whoops. I just want this object selected. That's the pull these apart so I can grab it. I want this side is going to be the black side. So I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to do Command Z on my keyboard to undo that move. Lock that, close it back up, go back up here to my box artwork. And I'm going to go to my edit menu and I want to paste in place. I said it paste in front or paste in place. Either one will work. I'm going to do paste in place. It's Command Shift V. And it drops it right in there. And I want to change, I want to fill it with, go to my swatches panel. Let's fill it with black. and let's turn off the stroke. And now I'm going to select the both of these and I'm going to unite them because again I want them to be all part of the same shape. Unite those together. Command Y shows that that's what I've created. If I come over here, I can always check these things. So the last thing I need is this line along here, and I'm going to do this slightly differently. So I'm going to grab, instead of my rectangle tool, I'm going to grab my line segment tool. And while I'm going to draw this as a line, stroked line, I'm not going to leave it that way because I cannot create a compound path out of a stroked line and a filled shape. So I am just going to click here, hover over top of this corner, you see it highlights, and drag this out to here. And I'm just going to do that, and I'm just going to go just a little bit further into it. And let's go to our swatches panel again. With stroke, we're going to stroke that with black, but I need to increase the width on it to match this width. Remember, this was 20 pixels, or 12, 14. 14 I made it. Usually I write these things down. It's not a bad habit to get into. But if I come over here to my properties panel, you'll see that I have an option for a stroke. So I'm just going to type 14. That creates that line. And now I need to change this to a filled shape. And I can do that again by going back to my object menu. And I've got two options here. I can go down to my path options and I can outline this stroke. And you'll see that it switched it from a stroked path to a filled shape. I could have done this as well with the expand. Expand is something that's newer, does the same thing that outline stroke does. A lot of times Adobe has these new tools, but they don't get rid of the old ones. So multiple ways of doing the same thing. So now that I have these, I'm just going to select both the objects, go back to my Pathfinder, and unite those together. And now if I do Command Y, I now have a single black and white piece of artwork that I can change the colors on if I want to. Just kind of keep working as I go along. So, very simple shape. Actually, I probably should have tapered this side a little bit. Actually, I could still do that. I don't think I need my construction material anymore, so I'm just going to select just this corner and drag it in just a little bit so that looks a little better, I think. Yeah. So there's our black and white piece of artwork. So now you remember I showed you that we're going to add a little bit of style to it. So let's go ahead and do that. Maybe make this look more like a dice. This is, you know, the six-sided die is just a box, you know. So I'm just going to select this. I'm going to hold down my Option key, click on it, and drag, and that's going to duplicate it. Just give me a copy off of my artboard so I don't lose this. I'm going to go back into this and go with my Direct Select tool again, A on my keyboard. And you'll notice that since this is selected, I now have all of these little dots inside. These are corner widgets. And I can round off the corners of this object by using these. So I'm going to start with my inside shapes. So I'm just going to click on that and drag it, and it'll round that corner over. And I'm going to go grab this corner and drag it. Maybe it's a little smaller. You know, Illustrator lets us be very precise, but sometimes we just need to kind of use our eyes to figure out what it is we need to do. Something further away is going to appear shorter, I think. Not a lot, but a little. And we're going to do the same thing with this one. Select this corner. Try to match up with that. These corners I feel are going to be the same. So if I hold down select one, hold down my shift key and click on the other one, we can round those. Don't worry about the outsides yet. And last but not least is our back one. And that's going to be fairly minor. And now we're going to round over these corners. And we're just going to drag them so that they look good. Select this one. Select this one. Select this one. And our last one. And just make these kind of the same. The nice thing is that I can still go back into these and change them. If I go back into this shape, if I click on like one of the 2 points created by the corner widget, I can still increase that even more or reduce it, whichever one you feel you need to do. But now, oh, I missed one. Now I've taken that. There we go. So now it's a little more stylized box. Looks a little more like a die. If I wanted to put, you know, the faces in it, I could do that. I'm not going to do that for right now, but carry on with that if you like. Try to keep the perspective. So again, I kind of hope you see how I've taken this, I break this object down. Everything is based on primitives, basic shapes. I create those and then, you know, create those objects, and then I go in and I work in my details. Work broad, just like a painter does. Work in broad strokes, broad fields of color, work your way into the details.